This podcast episode may contain explicit material. Listener viewer discretion is advised. The intention is not to offend, but to provide information. Proceed only if you are comfortable with potentially sensitive content.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Behind the Scenes with Sheriff Jason Ard. I'm Jason Ard. We started this podcast to educate everyone on the role of the Livingston Parish Sheriff's Office. We're about serving and protecting our community. On this podcast, we will tackle lots of topics. All right, today's podcast, we are very excited, as I always am, about each and every one that I have, that we are going to be talking about our upcoming, or actually we're already in hurricane season. And with that, I actually have two special guests with me. One is Chief Wascom, Fire District 4, our fire chief, a great friend of mine, been knowing him a long time, as well as the one and only Mr. Mike Steele. He's works with GOHSEP for the state of Louisiana. And guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this podcast. And we just want to talk about the upcoming hurricane season. And I keep saying that, but we're actually in hurricane season. And with that, but I like, James, let's talk a little about your background. How long have you been with the fire department?
So I officially got commissioned in 1984. And I've been the fire chief for 24 and a half years now.
Wow. We're not going to talk about where I was in 1984 and hang your age out there.
Well,
No, look, I know you've been around a long time, and you probably, in my opinion, has created a lot of things for the fire department and brought us where we're at today. I know you've been a leader in our parish for many years, and I appreciate that about you. Definitely dedicated your whole life to that fire department. A lot of family, I know a lot of your family's involved in it too as well. Mike Steele, the one and only, the famous. Give me a little bit about your background.
Infamous or famous? So I've been with GOHSEP for about 12 or 13 years now, working in emergency management. Before that, I worked in media, either radio or TV, most of the time in TV. And, we were talking about it before the recording. I think the last big hurricane or tropical event that I wasn't working in some capacity was Andrew. And that's kind of hard to believe back in 1992. But everything since then, I've either been a part of the media or part of the emergency management.
Yeah, I've been knowing you a long time too, mostly in the media world, and all of a sudden in state office doing what you do, and it's great to have you there. You've been an awesome asset for Livingston Parish. I know the state as well, but for Livingston Parish, you've always answered your phone. Of course, sometimes you have to because your wife is Lori Steele.
Live here, may have a deputy show up. Yeah,
right. But yeah, so 1992, I think I graduated high school that year. I'm gonna hang your age out a little bit
That's
too,
right.
all of us. But look, over the years, we became not only just good friends, but we worked together on a lot of these storms and things that we have to deal with when disaster happens. And everybody knows in the state of Louisiana, we have disasters. And James, you said a little earlier, I think the hurricane season don't just start June the 1st. I think it starts year-round here in Louisiana because you never know when the water's coming up and wind's going to blow the wrong way, or just this tropical storm's going to come over us and decide they're going to camp out overnight.
right.
The next thing you know, we have flooding. So we've had some problems year-round from not just hurricanes, ice storms and flooding, and it's just disasters that they happen. And I commend both of you for what you've done and your dedication to that. I want to kind of start off with one of the hurricanes that I think that has changed the game for us, and you're going to know which one I'm talking about, James, and probably you too, Mike, Hurricane Katrina. That's the one I go back to, which was in 2005, if I remember right. It's the first time as a law enforcement officer that I can remember really appreciate and understand what a first responder is.
Right.
That's whenever we started doing chainsaws, and I just was like overnight. Like I remember other storms, but we just didn't do what we did for Katrina. And it was devastating across our state, but it was very impactful here in Livingston Parish. And we learned a lot from Katrina, a whole lot. And I think that's what got us, when I say us, your fire departments and other agencies, and just came together, and I would. Is that kind of about the time when they created the GOHSEPs and the Homeland Security team? Do you know?
We were actually one of the changes. It was all under, civil service and that type of thing, or not civil service, but civil defense and everything at that time. But it all kind of changed as a result of Katrina.
Yeah, Katrina changed everything. And I mean, I was in New Orleans right after it hit. I remember Sheriff Graves calling, and it's like, hey, man, the state police SWAT team can't get to New Orleans because they have, a 2-day response because of, family getting their stuff together, what have you. So as Katrina is basically just moving through, we're getting together here in Livingston, and I take a team over, which, man, that's a whole story in itself. But we wasn't over there, but it seemed like maybe 48 hours. He pulls us back because of the things that are going on here in our parish. I mean, we're still out of electricity. I want to say it was 2 or 3 weeks. And
it was a while.
It was, but I can remember like it was yesterday. I don't know why I remember this, but I remember for some reason talking to you during Katrina, like almost like for the first time. Not that we didn't talk before, but on, I guess, a professional level, and learning how to work together in first responders. And when I say that, fire departments always took care of fires, law enforcement took care of the law, but this was different. It brought us together, and like Mike said earlier, it's got to change the game for everything.
I had sent crews to New Orleans, and like the sheriff's office, I had to bring them back because we had so much going here. And I look now at where we are as a parish today compared to where we were then. It's night and day.
Oh yeah. Do you remember that when they said they were going to do they set up the food stamp at North Park, and they were going to actually distribute food stamps over there, and all these people from all over were coming, and we were like, what here? Like, how are we going to handle the traffic? How are we going to do this? Right. And Willie's like, you need to get back here right now. And it was all hands on deck, and you guys helped us with that. Right. I remember we all, everybody, all hands on deck, and we had to kind of learn how to work that, and it was different for us.
I think it was the first time in the parish's history that we had been impacted on that degree. Mm-hmm. And again, we learned so much.
Yeah.
Today, it's not that big of an issue, but back then it was an issue because
it was.
We learned as we went.
We didn't even have chainsaws back then, if I can remember the sheriff. We may have had a few, but not like we do today. Well, and most every unit I have has a chainsaw, and we may not have them in them all the time, but we have it assigned. And you have to have the proper equipment here. So we've learned a lot.
We have.
Came a long way. And we've had so many disasters, and I know that how long you been with GOHSEP?
About 12 or 13 years now. It's ironic that we're kind of talking about some of this right now because we're looking at the 20th anniversary of Katrina right now, which is also hard to believe it's been that long. But we're taking a look at a lot of the things that basically change. Of course, there's a lot of tragedy and heartache that went along with that event, but there's also a lot of improvements over the years. One of the things is communication, because again, I was working in the media, and I always thought it was a little bit unfair what happened to the first responders and even the governor and some of the state agencies and everybody responding, because you couldn't get a message out of New Orleans. Mm-hmm. We went down there with a crew. I was working in Lafayette at the time. We went down there with a crew from another station that they had called in to help us that was out of Virginia. And I remember driving to New Orleans, and we were telling that crew, like, hey, we're probably going down here to do a, dodged a bullet type story because the storm turned and hit Mississippi. Nobody knew what happened with the levees yet and those situations. And then we get down there, and I remember somebody in that crew being like, is this what y'all think is like not a big deal or whatever? And I was like, no, I don't know what's going on. And we got to Causeway Boulevard that they had set up as like a lily pad operation, and about 50 helicopters started dropping in right on top of us with all the rescues coming out of Ninth Ward and Lakeshore and all those areas. And so, again, you couldn't get that. We couldn't even tell our station in Lafayette what was going on, much less the first responders, having their issues and all. But But, we have the Elwyn radio network now that the state established after that. Another big issue was EMAC, with Emergency Management Assistance Contract, where all the states can put calls out for help. We would run into fire departments, or like you said, if you guys were responding, we would run into crews all day long that would be like, hey, we're a fire department down here from Tennessee, but nobody can tell us where to go help or any of those type things. But now you have those networks set up where those requests are answered and there's specific jobs for those crews to go do.
It's a lot more organized.
A lot like what the Sheriff's Association does when you guys support each other in state, or the fire department's helping each other in state. We have all those mechanisms in place now where to ask for that help, and they respond to a certain area that needs that help the most.
Yeah.
And so there's a ton of things like that have improved over the years. The evacuation plans, all of those type things have improved, just incredibly, to the public's benefit over the years.
The communication of like all of us having the 700 radios where we actually can communicate across the state. One of the funny things that came to mind when you were talking about communication, when we arrived, we set up our command center. It was actually our SWAT truck behind the Civic Center. We went in the Civic Center. There's probably like 10 people standing in front of it. We go around and find a little place behind it on the river where we kind of set up, not far from the mall. Okay. About 4 or 5 hours after we're there, one of the deputies come find me wherever I'm at, and just said, "Bro, hey, we got radio traffic." I said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, we actually are talking to Livingston right now. We're talking, and for some reason, the 450 radios we had clear communication with us to the 911 center here in Satsuma, which very quickly became a communication for first responders. So then we had state police guys coming to find us, trying to get messages to it. So we wound up kind of bringing messages to people and trying to line things up, and just got lucky that radio we had and that we had set up wound up having communication. But you know how those frequencies are. Sometimes you clear skies, the wind blowing just right, but the whole time we were there, we actually had communication if we were sat in that one area.
Yeah.
And
we were getting random text messages, if we were on the West Bank driving through a certain area. But it was hard to imagine that catastrophic level of communication failure until it happens. And then, you plan out for it. Of course, now we have Starlink and all these other, great communication tools that are, to have backup on backup on backup now.
It is crazy, the communication that we have. And it's, but communication is always an issue.
Right.
That's one of the things that when you have these disasters, you go through go through a debrief after. It becomes like communication, but it has came so far. We have so many avenues of success now with that communication.
And as technology has changed.
Oh yeah.
It's taken us to another level, but again, we're having to have all the redundancy in place. During Katrina, we could work without a computer. We can't do that today.
No.
We have to have our computers.
It's actually kind of, I don't know, the word crazy comes to my mind, but it's just what we have been through, the learning point, the learning stages we've been through, and then where we're at today, like social media. So skipping over a few hurricanes, Isaac was my first hurricane as the actual sheriff. And Lori had just started working with me, and we actually wound up at our 911 center at the time, which was located in Satsuma. And I don't remember what news, there was a news station, I think, that actually came out, and they wound up getting kind of trapped with us. But she used social media to get the word out for the first time that I can remember, kind of trying to like introduce our page. Let's use this as a line of communication. And it was a success. I mean, it put us on the map. And I want to say for 12 to 24 hours, we just constantly was updating that page to where everyone was tuned in and listening to what was going on. And not only was they listening, they were actually, say it like that, following the rules. Like they were listening to what we had to say and doing what we asked them not to do. Don't just, that's what you want. And plenty of disasters after that. It became, the icy roads. Send pictures out. Look, this is what we're dealing with, folks. Stay home. Please don't get on if you don't have to. And they wouldn't. And it makes it so much easier for us to do our job.
It does, and actually cuts down our call volumes as well, because the more people that are on the road, the more accidents we have.
Right.
And now we're trying to get to that as well. So
yeah. It's one of those things.
And it's amazing what it can be used for, too, kind of going forward, because I know you guys are doing this here with the equipment, the studios, and everything you're setting up here. But what we learned during the last ice storm was we were able to bring the governor in, have our leadership with him for a press conference, and we were able to broadcast that press conference out where the reporters could ask questions virtually. And so, I mean, it doesn't make sense for us to tell people to stay off the roads if we're inviting them to come to GOHSEP for a press conference, you know. So I think all those things, like you said, the technology growth over the years makes that messaging a little easier. But
since you opened the door,
sure.
That's one of the things that I can't help but laugh, because we'll put out, stay off the roads, don't do this, and then I'll have somebody call, can we come out and do a story? No, stay off the road.
Yeah.
But now everybody has, well, can you zoom in? Yeah, absolutely, I'll do that. Mm-hmm. And it actually, it's a safe thing for all of us.
Right.
Because we're all not getting on. You don't want to have to get on the road. And I know you do the same thing, James. We ground our units during that time. We don't want them to have to go to anything unless they absolutely have to, life-threatening. So, and I think over time we've, not only us, but I just think our constituents here, they have also kind of learned to follow the rules. Let's just work together. It makes it a lot safer for everybody. But yeah, we came a long way. So the only reason I got you here, Mike, is to tell us how many hurricanes we're going to have this year.
You know, everybody, Jay Grimes often brings up, you know, the forecasts and taking a look at the conditions, you know, ahead of the season's always kind of interesting, or whatever. It really doesn't mean anything. And a lot of times I've heard, you know, either the National Hurricane Center or some of the other meteorologists that we deal with on a regular basis, they talk about 92, kind of going back to Andrew again. That was a storm, Andrew. Mm-hmm. It hit late in the summer, I think it was, and it was like the only storm that we had impact us that year. But that was a terrible year because that storm did so much damage. And so it doesn't really matter how many you get hit with. It's how severe they are a lot of times. And another thing is, we try to stress this, you know, to no end, but don't pay attention to the size of the storm. Pay attention to the impacts, because you could have a tropical storm that just sits on the coast and dumps 10 inches of rain a day, you know, for 3 or 4 days, and that can be just as devastating as a Cat 3 storm. So a lot of times you hear people say, like, oh, it's only going to be a tropical storm, or it's only going to be a Cat 1, but we try to make sure people don't take that approach, like always plan for something worse than what they're saying. And
don't pay too much attention to the eye of the storm. You need to look at the whole side, like you said, the whole size. Like, where's that line and where's this line on the east and the west? Well,
the National Weather Service just gave a presentation where they're talking about they're still going to show the watches and warnings outside of the cone.
Right.
Like some of the new modeling they have shows the cone, but it'll still show those potential impacts outside. Because you and I hear people all the time like, oh, we're not in the cone anymore. That doesn't.
That's where you focus. You can't. It's just human nature. You focus on the eye of the storm, but you know, you had said something just a little earlier about the impact of a storm, whether it's a level 1 or whatever it is. I mean, one of the things I look at is, okay, how much rain is this going to bring? Because we know rain devastates our parish, and is the wind coming from the east? You know, those are the kind of things that we worry about here, especially now since the flood of 16, and the wind can be, are we on the east side, are we on the west side, or are we on the? So I'm trying to see what we need to prepare for, and there's so many times where everybody's just kind of uneducated with that. They just spoke, oh, well, the eye's not coming here. We're fine. No, you're not fine. You're
Or-
actually maybe better off if the eye comes through you.
or if they think they survived a Category 2 storm. and
So
they
a Cat
think-
1's no big deal.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, but, we talk about it all the time. Sometimes a fast-moving, bigger storm is better than a slow-moving, smaller storm,
Yes.
So there's all those factors are in play, and we got so much of our state's vulnerable. Everything basically below Alexandria is vulnerable, in some aspect. We had hurricane warnings all the way up to the Arkansas border for Hurricane Laura. And if you flew over that half of the state, on that western half of the state, it looked like a giant tornado basically, went through.
So, Mike, talking about Hurricane Laura, I was actually the Louisiana Association president during the time. I just took the oath of office to move up to the president's seat. I took the oath of office in July 1st of 2020. And a couple of weeks later, it seemed like, I know it was just, I don't remember what month, it was maybe September or late August when
Yeah,
Little
they
Boy
were
hit.
all around that Katrina window.
Yeah, and it hits, and I was very fortunate to be able to be the president at the time. I absolutely believed at that moment that all the things that we've dealt with throughout our careers, you sometimes wonder why you're going through this, why you do it, and then all of a sudden you're able to help that many sheriffs. There was so many people impacted. It came in to Cameron and Calcasieu and just went all the way to Arkansas. I flew that, and it was just amazing to see the damage. And look, not only did it go through Arkansas, but then it caused flooding in the Carolinas. Am I right? Somewhere up there. I remember they had
north.
tremendous flood problems. It was like 2 weeks later, the storm's still giving people problems. It was a tremendous, the largest, if I remember right, recorded in Louisiana.
Yeah,
Ever
I
hit.
believe it's the largest made land.
And of course, I happened to be the president at the time. But it was a blessing at the same time to be able to share experience with other sheriffs, to work with sheriffs that's been through the same thing that we've been through here, and to help your newer sheriffs that may have never experienced that. And, they don't know how. Sometimes, you don't know what to do until you get in that situation. You try to figure it out. So it's good to have that person that's been through it. But yeah, it was definitely devastating, like all these storms are. They just, and we've had so many here, and there's a story behind each one of them. Look, right after Katrina, we had Rita. It was a couple months later, or it seems, I always say a couple months, probably like 2 weeks later, then Rita hits, and it's like nonstop, and that was a really rough year. We all wound up being in Lake Charles for weeks.
Well, with Laura, you had Delta hit within a couple of weeks, within 20 miles of where the other storm made landfall.
It's just, you never know.
Right?
Yeah, it is. But back to the biggest to me here is although we're prepared, we feel like we are, you never really 100%. Because you don't know what each one of these disasters are going to bring. And Mike, you covered it earlier. You don't know what the wind's going to do. You don't know what the rainfall is going to do. You praying that it don't do much, but you just don't know. And so with that, I know that we push out stuff. I know you guys do, and we do about, hey, be prepared for hurricane season.
Yeah.
Like really, truly be prepared. And I know the flashlights, the radios, the make sure you got plenty of food in your cabinet and water to drink, and you just never know how long you could be out of electricity.
The chief can probably hit on this better than I can, but that 3 days supply too is critical.
Yes.
And we saw that with 2016 here, because even some of our municipalities were calling us like, hey, we haven't really gotten anything from the state yet as far as resources, but all the roads were still covered. Like we still had all these different challenges. So Florida's motto with their preparedness campaign is the first 72's on you. And we think that's a great motto to use. But it's not just for our families or businesses. It could be for a parish or a municipality, because if the roads are inundated and you can't get access to certain places, it could be 2 or 3 days. Now we know the fire departments. We talk about rescuers and, and first responders not getting out until the winds die below a certain, threshold and that type thing. And we know everybody kind of pushes the envelope on that, but it's not guaranteed that you can be out there right away after a storm passes.
Right. And we usually, dispatch will start sending us calls, and we'll make the decision whether we're going to put a truck on the road. And in those life and death matters, we will.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I'm the world's worst for not getting off the road. James will tell you that. I just can't help it. But it's, you want to make sure you do everything you can, to keep the roads open for that purpose. But one of the things that we changed probably after Isaac, which Isaac was probably the worst hurricane that I've been in, because I actually live in Springfield now, and I was right in the middle of it. 150-mile-an-hour winds, and how it was probably the first time in my career I was really upset with myself for not telling my family to get out of here, because I've been through so many of them. Like we talked about earlier, it's no big deal. I mean, it's 150-mile-an-hour winds. That's a game changer. It was. It actually had me really worried at a couple of times. So it wasn't Isaac, it was Ida. So I'm correcting myself on that. I get a little ahead of myself sometimes. But that was just after that. It was something that we kind of sat down. You know what? We only have a certain amount of time to get our first responders to get ready. So usually it's like a 24-hour window when a storm stops. And one of the things we started focusing on, and Ida was the first time I did it, was, okay, as soon as this storm's over, we need to make sure we get all of our deputies, get to them, make sure they can get out of their homes, make sure that we can get them in a vehicle, get them the equipment, get them to work. And we also have to make sure their families are safe. So one of the things we would do is have a couple of contractors on standby for roof damage, so they put tarps on real quick, and have generators for them to where we can plug up their necessary things. I've started doing that because I can't help if I don't have my help, right? So we know we have 24 hours to do that. So time management is a big thing. And like you said earlier, make sure that you are ready for about 3 days, because it may be 3 days before anybody gets to you.
That's right.
Before they can physically get there. That's just one of those things. And James has got a good story. I can see it in his eye.
No, not necessarily a story, but that's one of the hardest things about being a first responder, is having to get away from your family and leave them alone, because we're at work and we don't know when we're going back home.
Yeah,
right?
It's two families.
It is.
Two families to deal with.
And it's very difficult on them.
And look, a lot of them can't afford generators. A lot of them, look, they just can't. And it's like a generator is a must at my house. I have to have one. Right. And I mean, I can't be worried about them, although you do, because you're human, but you have to focus on your people. And hey, we got work to do. And how do we get them out as quick as we can? But I've noticed the flood kind of did that to me, because after watching the deputies in the flood, I think we had 85 deputies that were, they lost everything. And they still came to work, but there was emotional roller coasters. Every one of them, they was go out and rescue people, and you see them standing off to the side, like dealing with what they're doing, because they lost everything. And they were so concerned about their families. They really was I'm just worried about my wife, my kid. Where are we going to sleep tonight? And look, like it or love it, a first responder usually is hard to get them sometimes in certain shelters, because they just have this mind frame, and it's just how they are. So there's so many things that we in the leadership of what we do that you have to kind of plan out, strategize.
So Ida, we talked about this in some of the after action meetings and everything dealing with Ida. Ida was basically what we thought Katrina was going to be in some ways, because it came in and then stayed straight through the state like we thought Katrina would. Katrina, veered off and really impacted areas like the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Right. But Ida stayed north and just, walloped this area. And that's, a whole nother issue when you're dealing with those winds, like you said, 150-mile-an-hour winds and everything that comes along with that. But it's also important, you brought up trying to look after your employees, and Chief, I know you guys probably do the same thing. But we encourage business owners to do that because they have to be able to get their businesses back open, but you also have to know where your employees are, know how to communicate with them. Even, this sounds like it's not a thing, but you probably saw it with the floods. People's mental health and everything gets affected when they go through stuff like this, especially when, like you said, we have to report to work every day while you're trying to rebuild your house or while you're trying to figure out where you're going to bring your family, and those type things. So it's good. I know we had to rotate a lot of people. There were a lot of people that were showing up for work in 2016 with us, and we had to say, go home. Go take care of what you need to go take care of. And those are the kind of things you need to look out for because otherwise, you may not have an employee base to work with.
Well, one topic on that too is how many, like whenever I got the contractors for the roofs kind of lined up, they wanted me to make sure that their workers could get there. So they were kind of tagged with us. So like you're saying, other businesses need to do it as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one thing with the hurricanes, we have time to plan, but a flood, we had absolutely no warning in 2016. So that took us to a different level.
Right. The flood was that's a probably 2-hour conversation in itself. It was a very, very challenging, the flood of 2016. It was devastating to this pair, the most devastating thing I've ever went through. Very challenging for us, but it also, again, you go through those things, those battles together. You become closer. You step back and you learn so much from them. And look, I know people think I'm crazy, but I'd much rather take a chance with some of these hurricanes than just flooding, because flooding is really difficult to deal with.
It's a different game.
It is. It's. I don't know. We had over 20,000 rescues during that, and that's what we could keep up with. There's probably thousands of more just from the residents and other organizations just help people rescue. Man, it was crazy.
And again, your cell towers were down, so you didn't have telephone service, and we relied on social media a lot,
right,
to get us there.
Yeah. And look, again, social media's game changer is being able to utilize social media as a tool and understanding what it can do for your citizens and putting that information out is very important.
I know a lot of first responders too have to monitor that a lot more also, because a lot of people, instead of calling 911, or if they can't call 911, that's where they're putting a call out for help. Mm-hmm. We saw it, I think it was with Isaac when Laplace started going under. A lot of the neighborhoods down there, a lot of people were posting on Facebook, hey, my mom and dad are on their roof, what's going on? And that was kind of how some of those initial conversations got started. So, it's a game changer for sure. One thing about social media, and you hear a lot of the weather experts and everything talk about this all the time, but make sure you're getting your information from verified sources when it comes to any event, because there's a lot of people out there that just want to cause chaos and put crazy information out for whatever reason. And so try to make sure you're vetting who you're getting your information from on social media, because there's so much.
It was kind of funny when Jay Grimes brings that up in some of his presentations about the different, they call freelancers on social media, and they put out these forecasts hoping that they get picked. It's like, don't pay attention to that. And I'm like, yeah, we have some of those too. Not just in the weather world, but it's really true. You got to know where you're getting your information from, and is it factual information? There's so many just con artists on the media. Not let me rephrase that. There's so many con artists that are out there in the social media world, the internet world. I mean, and of course Siri, she's like, nobody likes her because she's spying on you all the time. And but it's a lot of information out there that is not correct information. So go to your local fire department page, or police or your state agency. Like, go to a page you know is legit and see what they're doing and get that information. And and people take advantage of that. They do. They'll turn around and try to get money off of you during that time. Just anything they can do to scam somebody.
for the fire departments, we're going to put out our sandbag locations, and as things progress, if pods become available, what have you, we'll put that information out as well. But like you're saying, there's so many people that put misinformation out.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't know where to get the correct information. And maybe that's a failure on our part. I don't know.
Well, I think it's just that they get so inundated with information, and then and it's your parents send you this Facebook post that somebody actually posted and said, hey, they're saying that the bank just got robbed over, and that was the big thing we were running around during Katrina. The bank just got robbed in Dental Springs. I'm like, bank get robbed? They ain't gonna go out on the radio. But it's like they just throw these things out there, and it's a big thing for us to keep that information out. And I think over the past several years, I think we've done a good job of that. Of people know that GOHSEP Louisiana is legit, and District 4 is legit. Their Facebook page as well as ours, and we're going to put the proper information out. But there is so many different people out there freelancing, just trying to get their story heard, and at the same time, some of them actually cause chaos. And y'all get the phone calls.
Oh yeah,
is this real? No,
and with
real.
some of the weather modeling, at times there's actual models that kind of show what they're talking about. Right. But if you listen to true weather professionals, if it's not within that 5 to 7 day window, it's hard to say whether or not it's really going to happen or not. And so, we're all kind of looking at those same models. So it's not like we're trying to hide information from people, but you don't want to alarm people either if there's no guarantee that, those things are going to happen. And so it's kind of a balancing act. You want the public to stay informed, but you want them to listen to good information, solid forecasts, and that type thing as well.
They have to. And, one of the things that we're working on in the future, and hopefully it comes to pass, is a actual rescue center. And one of the things that actually gave me the idea was Gustav. And y'all remember during Gustav, we had just finished our new detention center located in Livingston. I think, the parish president was Mike Grimmer at the time, and then Sheriff Graves. But we had just finished it, 647 beds. No inmates had moved in, and Gustav hits. And we actually turned it into a center. And that's where we started working out of. And we actually housed right at 600 first responders from all over. We had them from other states and parishes, but they were coming there to work, and we was able to house them and feed them. It was one of the first times we didn't actually have to sleep in our trucks, in the back seats, and you had showers, and it was a generator. I mean, it was really nice to have that facility. And if I remember right, I think Demco actually was able to get the power turned on for us a lot quicker. And we even had some linemen actually staying there. And I'm pretty sure I remember that. And they had some linemen staying that came in work, and we had military. So it kind of gave me the motivation to push us toward that rescue center. And one of the things that we're hoping to accomplish with that is when we have that first 48 hours, we don't have a shelter set up. It usually takes 4 or 5 days sometimes for a shelter. Sometimes they can do it in about 3 days. But I know that's one of the things. Even though we have a designated shelter, sometimes it takes a little bit because you got to get workers there, got to get it opened up, you got to get it prepared before you just start dropping people off. This will allow that. Everybody will be brought to this one location, and then we'll bring them to shelters after that, and then it will actually give us a place that we can bring first responders, and they'll be able to continue work and have a place that they can actually come as well, and their families. And look, when we say first responders, linemen, they're first responders, not forget about that. And everybody wants them more than they want us because they want their power back on. So to be able to have a place to get them where they can get settled and go to work, it affects everybody. And that was, so Gustav was kind of my motivation, because I remember how well that storm went for us logistically behind the scenes. And I think with a lot of it was because your workers were actually had a place to sleep. And people may think that's crazy, but it's true. They didn't worry about things like we normally did.
Right. It's hard sleeping across the front seat of a line truck.
It is.
They're out there working. They're working 16 hours a day, and then they have to crawl in the truck to go try and get a little sleep.
Right. Like I say, look, man, I'm like 6'2", 6'3". I can't just sleep in the back of a truck, but you had to. You didn't have a choice. But that's kind of a motivational thing, and that's why we want to do it. I know a lot of the fire departments, it's just going to be a lifesaver for us. And not only that, we know that people across our state will benefit from something like this on any type of disaster. So look, guys, I appreciate y'all coming. Is there anything we want to kind of let our constituents know that in this hurricane season before we leave to make sure they understand?
Like you said, we're in it. It's here now. So, have your game plan. Get ready. Make sure you have your documents that you're going to need if you have to leave home. Have your kits ready. Batteries, radios, weather radios. Just make sure you're ready for it.
We kind of encourage everybody to go to getagameplan.org. You can download our Get a Game Plan app. The website will include like a 2-page guide to help you with your supplies, maybe if somebody's new to the area or just moved here, that type thing. It'll help you kind of look at the things you may need. It'll also talk about all the threats we face. Like we put so much attention on hurricane season, but like we talked about the floods, the things that can happen within a matter of hours, a big hazmat event, any of those type things can also be just as severe sometimes. So
what did Jay Grimes say a while ago? The number one cause of death in hurricanes during disasters. Remember what he said?
Heat.
Yeah. After the aftermath, you have no power in Louisiana.
Generators have been a big issue in recent years.
So sometimes sunshine will kill everybody.
Yeah. There were a few hurricanes where we actually lost more people in Louisiana due to generators than we did from the actual storm. So, that's another thing we've had to work on messaging about using those safely and making sure people follow the rules for generators and all. So, it's always changing, but it's always good for the public to stay informed and kind of stay aware of what's happening.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, and we also we have an app as well. So if you don't have the LPSO app, please download it. We try to keep you up with that as well. Well, that's going to do it for Behind the Scenes with Sheriff Jason Ard. I appreciate you listening. Download our app. Follow us on social media. And look, James, Mike, thank you guys for being here, taking time out of your busy day to make sure we get these messages out to our people. And again, thank you. And I respect you for what you do and appreciate you.
Thanks.
With that, look, here in Livingston Parish, we love our schools, we love our churches, and we absolutely believe in the Second Amendment. Be safe and be blessed.